Anybody listening in who's considering niching down within their marketing agency, you need to look at your market's data and understand not only how many leads do you need to generate, but then what happens further down that sales pipeline to ultimately dictate what is a successful outcome for them. If you don't understand those numbers and you can't prove that every time they invest $1 in, they get $10 out, you don't own a marketing agency, you own hope. And you can't build a marketing agency on hope.
Welcome to the Deep Specialization Podcast, the show where we blend focus, strategy, and client intimacy in order to scale and simplify our businesses and our lives. I'm your host, Quinn. Let's jump into the show. Welcome back to the Deep Specialization Podcast. Today, we have an incredible guest who has scaled his agency from a startup to 7 figures in just 11 months. I recently met him at the Agency Freedom Live conference in San Diego. He just got back from Miami with 7-figure agency. Today, he's here to share his incredible journey and insights into managing a major health crisis while scaling through specialization. I'm really excited for this one, folks. His name is Austin Hauser. Welcome, Austin.
Corey, thanks for having me here, man.
So could you just give us a 10,000-foot overview of who you are and the business that you run?
So my name's Austin Hauser. I'm out of Wilmington, North Carolina. I have a team of 36 today. I run a company called Base Coat Marketing. We are a full-service digital agency exclusive to residential painting companies, commercial painting companies, and epoxy floor coating companies. So if you got a coating and you want to put that on a surface, we can help you.
That's awesome. And tell us about the history of your agency, maybe the origin story. I know that my understanding is that you started off maybe not as specialized as you are today. So where did things begin for you?
Yeah, so like any poor college kid, I needed some beer money, and I was going to school for a few degrees. I was like the nerd that had some social skills, so I went to school for computer science, computer security, math, and business. So I spent a lot of time in the library getting some shit done. And I identified that, hey, I can make some money along the way. So I started up an LLC, got some business cards from Staples, and started making some websites for any business with some spare cash. And that kind of just was my side project for about a decade. I mean, really, like I had that thing running on the side. It was producing income, but really wasn't scalable because every single client you brought on, you had a new marketing strategy behind them.
So I'm just curious because you were in college and you had this business for 10 years. And what year did you graduate college?
So I graduated in 2010. I started this in 2008. So about middle of the road through college, like, yeah, you know what? We can make a business out of this. And I felt like I had a business at the time, but really, like, honestly, I just owned a job.
And so after college, you went full time into this web design business. Is that effectively what it was?
Yeah. So, I mean, actually, I entered like the workforce because I had student loans and that was not paying the bills. It was don't get me wrong. It was some good money on the side. It was very little effort and energy out of my day at that time, but it's difficult to scale a job. So I joined the workforce, worked my way up through the corporate ladder. I worked as director of e-commerce for a large online brand, gained a lot of experience on the marketing and sales side. And over the years, I identified that, like, hey, if I was going to turn this thing on the side into a business, which I always had that itch, like I call it the entrepreneurial curse, right? It's like, you know, you can do something more than you're doing today, and you've seen other people do that. So it's like, why can't I do it too? And I just had that itch of like, I've seen these other guys do this stuff. I think I can do it. So I really just decided to pull the trigger one day and take a step back and identify how I can scale this thing. And that was around 2021.
So personally, I can relate to that. I helped scale a big agency. I'm not the founder of the agency. I'm not the CEO. I was working my tail off. It was an amazing experience, a career-making experience for me. But I also had that itch, I imagine similar to you, where it was like, I love helping this entrepreneur, like working for this entrepreneur, helping them bring their dreams to life. I'm ready to do that for myself. That's actually when I left Scorpion and I decided to invest in myself instead of going and working for another entrepreneur. So I've always had that itch. I had to, like you, pay the bills, get a job, wife, kid, the whole reality. So I know what that must be like. And as relates to, so you're working on a big e-com business, you had this website design and marketing company on the side. At what point did you realize, hey, I can actually go all in on this? What was happening in the business?
Yeah, so I had just a really cushy job at the time. Like it was paying the bills and then some. And I had a small team under me. We were working on a big platform migration at the time. And around that time, I actually picked up Josh Nelson's book over at the Seven Figure Agency. It was, how to create a seven figure marketing company. And I listened to that audiobook as I was driving my kids to school every day. And it was funny because I had listened to Grant Cardone's 10X book right before that, and he had narrated that book on an audiobook, and his energy is outrageous, right? So then transitioning over to Josh's book, I almost turned off that podcast or the audiobook the
I mean,
very first time I was
yeah.
listening to it. I'm like, I need something more high energy than this. But I'm glad I didn't
Yeah,
because it
or the
literally
energy.
changed my entire life. He basically took a mountain and gave me a roadmap, and it helped me identify how I can
Love it.
take what I'm doing today, the skills and the mindset behind that, and implement it into a scalable business model, which just really comes down to focusing on one thing.
And it's interesting. So backstory with Josh, I used to work at an agency called Scorpion, and we were originally in law firms, and we went into home services. And of course, we were curious about who the major competitors were. And at the time, Josh's company, I think it's called Plumber SEO. I think he's got a couple companies now. It's an agency, and he was a force in the space. We had to get into the space. We were new to home services and figure out uh, how to build an agency around home services. And so that was my original exposure to him. And then years later, I left Scorpion, and I still knew about him, and he was gracious enough to invite me onto his podcast, and that's how I began a relationship with him. So he's a great guy. I know he's on a mission to help. I think 1,000 agency owners reach a seven figures, and he's just got such a great group there. So it's great to hear you what came up through his program.
Fantastic group, highly recommend it.
Yep.
And it's funny, I actually saw you on stage for the very first time at his event last July. And
Yeah.
I didn't connect the dots until after you got off stage at Chris's event the other week. Like, damn it, I knew I've seen you somewhere before. So, yeah,
Yeah.
great message. I love everything that you're pitching up there on stage, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So you're in 2021, and you decide is that when you were listening to Josh's program, and you were kind of leveraging his program and the roadmap he was laying out, that was the sort of the path that led you to leave the full-time gig?
Yeah. So actually, this was during the same time. At this point, during this big platform migration at this 9 to 5 that I had, the team was working away. We were ahead of schedule. We were under budget. Like we were doing well. So I felt pretty good about everything. This is like, I think around August. So sometime in Q3. And I purchased the domain basecoatmarketing.com around that time. I'm like, you know what? I think I can make this work. So at that time, I just started building behind the scenes for a couple months. And fortunately, I have the skills to be able to do a lot of that stuff, like the
Yep.
foundation laying of a business. Um, and I got the framework in place. And then towards the end of that year, that 9 to 5 ended up consuming all of my time as that platform migration came due. We had some additional QA and some things to button up. But I mean, at the end of the day, we delivered that thing on time and under budget. Now at that time, again, this is heading into 2022. I had put the entire side business on hold because I was working like 100 hours a week at that time. It was eating up a lot of my time and it was very stressful.
Mm.
And then 2022 hit, and January 3rd, right after New Year's, I had these monthly check-in calls with the CEO at the time. And I very vividly remember getting on this call and being really proud of my team. Like, hey, we just completed this like 6 month platform migration. Like, we delivered it all, like every single possible definition of success. We're good here. I'm gonna get a bonus, a raise, or at the very least a high five. And before the end of that call, or within about the first 30 seconds before I even had a chance to ask him how his Christmas went, I was thanked for all my hard work and told him that they were eliminating my entire team. The
Oh,
entire platform migration was designed to outsource our team, so we literally worked ourselves out of a job. So I had a lot of regret about all the Christmas gifts I had got the couple weeks before that. um, And then I was left hanging with the decision. I'm like, all right, so I have an opportunity to either generate some income by testing out this new model that I hadn't even launched yet, or go get another job and another 9 to 5. And
Sure.
after talking it through with my wife, I'm like, hey, I think there's an opportunity here that I can leverage. Let's test it out. I had some money in the bank. I'm like, let's give it 3 months and see where this goes. After 3 months, if I need to pull the ripcord, I'll go find another job. And that's
Yeah.
what I call the push that ultimately got the momentum going for me to be able to launch this whole thing, which I launched on February 1st of 2022.
So what about this opportunity? You were laid off unexpectedly. I can't imagine what that must have felt like to learn that you literally were killing yourself and putting work first for 100-hour weeks to, work yourself out of a job, which is absolutely nuts. I would be pretty upset, as I'm sure you were. But at that point, you looked at this January 3rd, you started February 1st. What about this opportunity? Like what about it told you that, yeah, this is worth pursuing, at least putting 3 hard months into it? Like what about it was attractive?
All right. So I look at anybody and anything that they do, and the ultimate thing that determines success, like those that put in the reps versus those that actually lift the weight, is focus, right? And if you have a business and you're generating volume, but you want to scale it, you need to be focused. You need to become an expert in the one thing that you can then push on to its fullest extent. For
Yeah.
me, marketing was something that I was very passionate about, right? Like I had been in the development world of being a number on a board with 60 other developers in a sweatshop, and that just wasn't for me. Marketing was a way to build relationships. It's making connections. So I had fun doing that, but the marketing for a bank is very different than a restaurant versus an online brand. And for you to have to relearn that strategy every single time, it's difficult to scale. Whereas if you find one particular industry that you enjoy working with, and that you have the strategy behind it to scale it, well, then it's just a copy and paste model. And then you're no longer selling a service, you're selling a product. And that was the unlock for me, was I can do everything I'm doing today, but instead for everybody, which I will say, it's scary pulling back and saying no to people. Around that time, I actually refunded a client $14,000 because I had the mental foresight to say, this will inhibit me long term, even though it's a fun short term money grab. And I refunded all $14,000 to focus on this new model.
Why did you choose this industry or this vertical?
So so I had acquired a number of painting companies over the years. I'd worked with some of the big franchise brands, and it just kind of fell into it. Like I had no intention of serving the painting industry. I get asked all the time, like, yeah, did you own a painting company? Like I would never recommend a painter do your marketing. Like they're two different things, right? So no, I don't know anything about running a painting business. I mean, I should say I know more than I did 3 years ago, but
Yeah.
at the time they were just another, notch on the belt. Like I had a few of them under the belt, and at the time, it's very different now. It was a blue ocean. It was a very
Yeah.
underserved industry, and we were just
Yep.
really good at generating results. So that just I looked at what we were already doing and determined what can we scale up based on historical data.
So historical data, what kind of historical data helped to inform this decision?
So the big thing is effort. How much effort do we need to put in to generate an output that was economical for the client? So this
Yeah.
is where I really like anybody listening in who's considering focusing on an industry or really niching down within their marketing agency. You need to look at your market's data and understand not only how many leads do you need to generate, but then what happens further down that sales pipeline to ultimately dictate what is a successful outcome for them. If you don't understand those numbers and you can't prove that every time they invest $1 in, they get $10 out, you don't own a marketing agency, you own hope. And you can't build a marketing agency on hope. Because at the end of the day, everybody can generate leads. I can generate $5 leads all day long. I can tell you right now that's not going to be economical for our clients.
Yeah.
So get to know your industry's data. We just had all the data available. I knew exactly how many leads I needed to generate on average each month. for them to have a successful outcome. And I was looking for the lowest effort, highest reward industry. And for us, that just happened to be painting.
I love that. Low effort, high reward. That sounds like a good business.
Yeah. I mean, look, you can do marketing for, let's say, restaurants, right? But their margins are tight and you need to be able to track that data, which is difficult. So make sure that you fall into an industry that you have the data, but like make sure you enjoy working with them. Like go spend some time with your clients if you have some. Just take them out to lunch and make sure that this is an industry that like you get excited about.
Yeah, that's advice that I share all the time, which is you could choose a great industry off of the spreadsheet. Yeah, it's a lot of them. They have good ad budgets for ad spend, but to truly be successful, especially today, like you got started a handful of years ago, but today it's more competitive than ever, I think. And so to make it in the long run, I think the care factor, like you actually have to give a damn to be successful because you're going to be spending a lot of time with these folks. You're going to be speaking from their stages. You're going to be interviewing them on your podcast. You're going to be writing content for them. You're going to be coaching them, all of these things. And if you don't have any level of connection or affinity, or even that you care about this industry, it's going to be much more difficult to be successful, I believe.
Absolutely. And, I think a lot of us get into business looking at the cash grab, like, hey, this is going to be an industry I can make money off of.
Yeah.
And then we fail to understand that passion is eventually going to be something that really becomes a priority in your life. Like what gets you excited to get out of bed each day? I honestly think that's why most businesses fail in under 5 years. It's not because they run out of money. It's because they become less passionate about what they're doing.
Right. They lose interest, or they decide to do something else because they can't see themselves continuing to do this.
Correct.
All right. So it's February 1st of 2022.
Yep.
Is that right? And you started this agency. What happened next?
So I launched some Google ad campaigns and launched the website. I remember like big launch day, February 1st. I was super proud. I was excited. And I acquired my very first client that very first month. I was like, I told my wife, I'm like, I think I did a thing. I think I like unlocked that's a scalable business model.
Yes. Got it.
And so I was really excited at that time. And I felt like I wasn't going to have to pull that ripcord. Now I was still investing, I don't know, a couple $1,000s a month in the ad campaigns. That first client, I think it was like $1,000 a month. Fun story. That first client that I acquired was still with us today.
I love it.
So, but yeah, so we migrated the old clients that I had under the previous business model under Base Coat Marketing, put the old marketing agency completely on ice. And those clients were still paying some bills, but overall, I was still investing in a negative recurring asset. So this business model was not profitable at that time. And it was around this time, actually, it was a couple months leading up to Christmas that I had these like recurring ear infections that they just kept popping up. And like anybody who's busy, like when you have some sort of an annoying health problem that's not like enough to drive you to the doctors, you just kind of ignore it. I'll equate it to like, I don't know, like an ingrown toenail or something. Like it hurts. It kind of comes and goes, but it's not painful enough to go seek advice, right? So after a few months of these like recurring ear infections, I finally went to go see a doctor and he checked me out, and every single time it would be the same thing. Like it would last for a week. And I do a lot of like spear fishing, and I'm in the water a lot with my boys fishing and surfing and all that kind of stuff. So I always just kind of chalked it up to like, I'm just in the water a lot. And so did our doctors. So they just always sent me home and said, hey, just come back if it happens again and we'll run some more tests. And then finally push came to shove. It was early March of that year. So a couple weeks later, I was finally referred to an ENT and they stuck me in an MRI machine, and the doctors made it seem like very optional. Like, hey, we're just going to roll out this super rare thing. You probably don't have it, but we're running out of options because right now we're chalking up all of these symptoms that you're having to stress. And at that time, towards the March, I started developing vertigo, which is where the room spins while you're just kind of sitting there for no reason. I had tinnitus, which is that ringing in your ear. And it just started to develop these really weird symptoms. And they chalked it up to like an autoimmune disease, to the point they actually prescribed me meds for that. I hadn't started taking them yet. And I told my wife, I'm like, hey, look, the doctors are pretty confident. It's this thing. I'm just going to start taking these meds. And she's like, no, you go to the doctor and you get that scan done. So I got the scan and then I forgot about it and I just got back to work. And I think during March, I acquired another client or two. So again, I felt pretty good about everything. And then finally, I remember this day very vividly. It was March 28th, 2022. It was my 34th birthday. I had plans to go golf that day. Tend to go golf on my birthday. It's just usually a nice sunny time of the year. And before I had a chance to get out of bed, my wife comes walking in the room and she's crying. And she drops an MRI scan on my lap and proceeds to tell me that I was diagnosed with a 1.5 centimeter brain tumor. And it's growing next to my brainstem. And the ironic part about this story is my wife works in the radiation oncology field. So my first thought was like, hey, I'm married to a pretty smart woman, smartest person I know. She knows how to fix me. Yeah. So my panic level was like pretty low at that point. I'm like, all right, babe, let's talk through this. Like, there's going to be an outcome here that we can all live with. And she did not seem to agree with that assessment. And I couldn't figure out why. So I don't know. I never asked her like if she knew why or if she was just afraid to tell me. But the next week we booked a meeting at the local hospital with like a dream team of specialists that she pulled together from her network of doctors. And we talked through like all available treatment options at that point. And I like to say, like, based on the fact that we live in the most advanced country in the world with all of our medical technology, like they gave me two options. The first was radiation, which is what my wife does. And it's like going to the dentist. It's a very like high level procedure. They stick you in a machine that looks like a CAT scan machine and they shoot you full of radiation. And the risks were relatively mundane until you get to the bottom of that list, which was like, 20% chance of facial paralysis, 100% chance of guaranteed hearing loss in that ear. It's all tied to your auditory nerve. And at the very bottom of that list was I think it was a 5% chance or a 10% chance of me dying of brain cancer before my kids graduate high school. Because at my age, radiation, while it may kill the tumor, it also has a chance of developing brain cancer on top of that. So the second option was surgery, and surgery was basically stacking all of the risks of something like that into one day, where you go in and you either come out the other side tumor free, or you come out the other side and you're dead or a vegetable. And I knew at my age, I couldn't live the rest of my life with a ticking time bomb in my head, waking up each day wondering, is today the day that I have to go see the doctor and they're going to give me bad news? So at that point in time, I was left with a very, very tough decision. And I remember sitting in this conference room with the local surgeon and like all the other doctors were talking amongst themselves. I remember leaning over. I was like, hey man, if this were your head, what would you do? And he, without missing a beat, said, I've seen the consequences of this surgery, so I would choose radiation. And at that point, I knew that like I was in deep shit, but I didn't have a really good option. And there was a lot of uncertainty behind all of this. At that time in my life, I had just started developing our sales process under this new business model. I had a few clients under my belt, and I had launched this business like a month and a half before that. And then I was left with the prospect of having a gun to my head without any safety net. There was nobody that was going to hire me at that time, not with a brain tumor and an uncertain outcome. And I could barely drive at that time because the vertigo was so bad. And then I needed to figure out what was next. And that was one of the most challenging times of my life, April of 2022.
And that's when you had the surgery?
So it was a couple weeks of me in between client calls and sales calls. I was interviewing doctors from around the world because like this isn't like an arm or a leg where like you break your arm, you go to the hospital, they're going to stick some, screws in you and piece you back together. It's pretty mundane stuff. Even if they happen to mess up, like worst case scenario, you have a weird arm. Your brain, your head is not really meant to be opened up. So when you look at the risks, and if you really want to make your head spin, go sit in a doctor's office and have them talk to you about brain surgery. There's a ton of risks that they have no idea what the outcome's going to be. When they throw around numbers like 10, 20, 30, 40%, what they're really telling you is they don't know. and that these are the risks.
Right.
So I was calling around trying to locate the best doctor in the world for a procedure like this. And again, I would literally hang up the phone from a sales call, immediately get on the phone with a doctor. And that was my life for about 2.5, 3 weeks. And I found 2 doctors out of San Diego, California, Dr. Friedman and Dr. Schwartz. And these guys are the best of the best. Like, if you have this type of tumor, you go to these guys. They train doctors from around the world. People fly in from like Hong Kong to go see these guys. Like, they are the top of the line surgeons for this. So I remember being on an intake call with them after I decided that I was going to pursue that route. And their intake nurse told me that I needed to book a one-way trip out to San Diego because recovery times vary, and to be expecting to be out there for at least 2 weeks. And then you can book a return flight home once you're fully recovered. So it was around that time that we booked a flight, and I just then proceeded to try to get in like the best physical and mental condition of my life because I wanted to set myself up for success. I knew if I went into that surgery with like a strong mind and a strong body, that I had a pretty positive chance of coming out with a positive outcome. And I decided to do that. And over the course of the next month, I accomplished that goal. I got in the best physical condition of my life, meditated every day. Like, I felt like I was going into that pretty good. And then 3 days before takeoff, our dog died unexpectedly. He was 9 years old. He was a bulldog. His name was Dozer. And, I like to tell the story in the sense that, like, losing a pet is like losing a family member. Like, it sucks. And it's the unexpected nature of it didn't help. But what hurt me the most was having to look my kids in the eyes, which they were 3 and 6 years old at the time, and they had never experienced loss before. And having to explain to them that both their mom and dad were not going to be there to help support them through this. I had never experienced a low point like that in my entire life. And I thought that was like as low as I was ever going to get. I did not see any possible way that anybody in my life could possibly relate to what I was going through, and that I just felt pretty alone and hopeless. And again, I had a business on the side at this point, which at this point in time, we're talking about middle of May of that year, I had put everything on ice. I had called every single client I had. I think I had like 6 clients at the time. I told them, like, hey guys, I have to do this thing that I don't know how I'm going to come out on the other side. And I put all of their accounts on pause and told them I would give them a call after that procedure. And if everything went well, we'd get everything back up and running. So at that point, that was the last straw for me. I had put everything on ice, and we, and it's funny at that time in my life, I considered, like, I wasn't afraid of death. I wasn't afraid of dying on an operating table. I think my wife had a pretty good insurance policy out on me at the time, but, I hadn't considered coming out like a vegetable and like what that would do to my family and the burden that would put on them.
Yeah.
And that's where I identified that I was either going to overcome this mental challenge or I was not. And I specifically remember telling my wife at that point in time that I would rather die than be a burden. And I like to, to point out, when we look at running a business as business owners, and this is something that I can relate to this time in my life, we're not afraid of failure, right? Like in this case, failure would have been dying on an operating table. We're afraid of the uncertainty. We're afraid of the unknown. And at this time in my life, I didn't know what that looked like on the other side, and the uncertainty to go along with that, and how powerful that can be. Like, right, as entrepreneurs, we like being in control. We like knowing the outcome to a problem. And if we can't solve that problem, it feels like our freedom is being ripped away. So it was around that time that I've never felt more uncertain in my entire life. So my wife and I, we got on a plane, flew across the country to California, and I proceeded. So I'll tell this quick story. I think I mentioned it at the last event that I was at with you, Corey. But I remember sitting in the courtyard outside of this, it was called the La Jolla House. And at the time I was sitting on a little bench outside, beautiful California weather, right? And there was this guy sitting a few tables over from me, like listening to the sales pitch that I was on, because I was on a sales call. I was literally on a sales call the day before my surgery. because I was like, I need to serve my family, and it's either this is going
Yeah.
to work or it's not. So like, you want to talk about the grind and the hustle culture? Like, I was living it. I was everything Alex Hormozy would have been proud of, right?
Yeah. Right.
Um, and I remember sitting on this bench the day before my surgery. I had all the post or the pre-op work done on a sales call with somebody, and the sales call ended, and this guy who was just like sitting on this park bench a few tables over from me smiled and walked over after I was off the call, and said, "Now why don't you go spend time with your wife?" And like,
Mm.
this moment stood out to me so much because I'd never met this guy in my entire life, and it pissed me off. I'm like, who would just come up to a random stranger and say, "Now go spend time with your wife"? How did he know my wife was here? Like, why would he even say that? And I got talking to my wife later on that day. I guess she was talking to him. He was on this campus with his family for 3 months leading up to that day. He had gone through a heart transplant 3 months prior to that, where he had 3 heart attacks on the operating table, and he was lucky to be alive. And it was in that moment, after I had closed up my laptop and I was talking to my wife about that experience, that it occurred to me, like, I just could possibly have spent an hour of my life today, which could be the last day on earth, talking to a stranger about digital marketing services.
Right.
And just the weight that put on me of how regretful that might make me if I don't make it out of here. And the fact that I could have spent that hour with my wife instead. So it, again, whenever I talk about in a dark place, I felt like I was there. Um, Unfortunately, life had some other plans.
I guess what I'm curious about was what was your mindset when you're going into that operating room? Because you had this experience with Dozer, who passed away, your boys, I think they're both boys, right? They
Yeah.
had to wrestle with the grief and not, as children, without guidance from their family. You had a growing business that you really wanted to invest in. You saw a path about that. All these crazy, experiences converging. What was sort of your mindset as you're going in? What were you visualizing? What were you expecting to happen as you were going into that operating room?
My
Yeah.
childhood was like extremely stable and certain. Like, I had no hardships in my life. I grew up in a middle class family. I went to college, as one does. I met the love of my life. Like, I had a very stable upbringing. So when you want to talk about challenges, sure, I faced some challenges, but nothing that I would rather like stand up on stage and talk about. Because there's others out there that have suffered and gone through the pain and uncertainty of life in a much greater manner. Now, I'm inherently a positive person. I tend to see the positive things in life, even when life gives you lemons, right? But in this particular case, I wasn't 100% certain that that was going to be a positive outcome. I didn't know what
Mhm.
the outcome that I could even expect was going to be. They warned me about some of the risks involved, and you literally sign your life away going into
Yeah.
this, where you have a dictionary full of paperwork, and on one of those pages is you signing your life away, saying if you die on the operating table, they are not liable.
Right.
So I I didn't have a good mindset at that time. Like, my body was there, but leading up to that, I was concerned about my boys. I was concerned about being a resource for my family and what that would look like on the other side if I was incapable of working and supporting them.
Yeah.
Because we had a conversation about we might have to sell the house, and I didn't know where we were going to live, because our area that we bought into along the beach, there isn't many affordable houses around here. So we would literally have to pull our boys out of school and move somewhere else. Like, we had these very, very challenging conversations leading up to
Mhm.
this time that I felt like my only option was to make this business work, for better or for worse.
So how would you describe your mindset? Like conflicted,
Um,
nervous, unsure, uncertain?
I was absolutely terrified. I
Yeah.
had
Wow.
no idea whether or not I was going to be able to come out the other side and kiss my wife again or look at my boys again. Um,
Yeah.
Again, your head's not meant to be opened up. And
Yeah.
regardless of what the risks are, the percentages are, you don't know what that outcome's going to be. So, terrified would probably be a good way to describe that.
Hmm. What was it like to open your eyes after the surgery?
So, after the surgery, and I will mention, if anybody wants to undergo surgery in UCSD, San Diego, California. That hospital, those operating rooms, it's like a 5-star luxury resort. I've never seen anything with so much medical
You're ever gonna
technology and
have brain surgery. That's the play.
oh, it felt like I was on the Starship Enterprise, man. It was
That's awesome.
wild. So yeah, I get into this operating room and there's medical equipment everywhere, and they, put the mask on me. They made me count backwards from 10, and I woke up later
Yep.
that afternoon. I got there around like 4:30 in the morning. Woke up around 5:30 that afternoon, and I always say it felt like I woke up with the worst hangover of my life after getting hit on the head with the side of a or hit on the side of my head with a bat. Like the
Wow.
entire world was spinning 24/7. I had no hearing on this side, even though they said I did. I couldn't hear anything. I had no facial paralysis, which was another big risk associated with that surgery. Was basically half your face would go numb forever. Um, and I couldn't see straight. I had double vision. So my entire world was crossed and it would continue to cross like that. The vertigo was so bad that even whenever I was asleep, my dreams would spin. And I didn't even know that was a
Gosh.
possibility.
Yeah.
So yeah, you want to talk about nausea, all of the bad things associated with a spinning room 24/7. I had that.
Yeah.
I couldn't walk.
That's sounds like hell.
Yeah. I was on a fentanyl drip at that point. I remember that very specifically, and I don't recall that doing much for me at all.
Yeah.
It was a world of pain, and I will say though, I had never been more happy in my entire life. I was
Wow.
alive, and
Yeah.
that very next day, I remember smiling. My wife took a picture of me. I felt like a big weight had been lifted off my shoulder at that time.
Was it physical pain or just the pain of the vertigo and everything that's happening?
It was a combination of everything. I was hooked up to so many IVs at that time, and
Yeah.
it's funny. I remember. I don't remember if it was the first day or the second day. I remember that they started getting me up and walking around, and I'd learn how to walk again. So like they would do little walks to like from the bed to the bathroom, and then from the bed to the door, and then down the hallway a little bit and back. They had these little like
Yeah.
styrofoam blocks they put out. And
Yeah.
I met all the physical therapists the day before surgery, so I know exactly what I was going to be doing. They had like a ball they would throw back and forth and stuff. And I think it was like day 2. I remember texting one of my clients saying, "We're good." And I felt really, really good about that because I knew I'd be able to support my family again. And like that was the
Oh.
weight that was lifted off my shoulders.
Mm. So I had a cancer journey about 3 months, 4 months into my business here. Um, we don't have to go into it, but I'm visioning what it was like to be on that operating table. I had lung cancer. They had to take out a lobe of my lung, and so I was revisiting what it's like to be in the recovery room, and then into the halls where you're walking for the first time. Crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah,
So you made it through this uncertain, crazy time.
I did it.
Got got all the way through. Yeah, you got all the way through to the day or two after surgery. You text your client, and what happens? Like, what's the recovery like?
Yeah, so I felt like I was good. Like they felt like the procedure went well. I was up walking around a few days. They actually discharged
Mm.
us for like this 10-day monitoring period. And I never really
Oh,
understood why I needed to stick around. I'm like, I can walk now, guys. And like by walk, I mean
I'm
like
good.
I had like a cane and everything. Like
Yeah.
I was
Cruising.
probably like had the same stability as like a 90-year-old man, but I felt pretty good. I was like, hey, I'm ready to go home now. And it was 3 days later. I was lying in a hotel bed, and it was around 3 in the morning. And they don't give you pain meds after a surgery like that. After you leave the hospital, they just give you extra strength Tylenol. And it's because like at that point, there's really not a ton of nerves on the side of your head, and
Okay.
there's no nerves or pain receptors in your brain, right? So there's
Wow.
no pain actual sensation up there.
Mm.
Um, so I was eating these Tylenol pills trying to get this migraine to calm down, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse to the point where it was around 6:30 in the morning. My wife got on the phone with the hospital, and they said, "You need to immediately get back here."
Ah,
They I remember them saying, "You can wait on an ambulance or you can call an Uber." So we called an Uber.
yeah.
I was in the backseat of this Uber. I couldn't open up my eyes. My head felt like it was just in a vice grip that was slowly getting tighter and
Oh,
tighter and tighter. And They stuck me in a CT machine. They rushed me through this massive line of people waiting to get into the ER. Stuck me in a CT machine and shot me full of Dilaudid, which is like a form of morphine they give to soldiers on the battlefield who are shot. And they're like, we're going to get this pain under control. I remember them saying that, and nothing happened. And it was like 5 minutes later, they came in and diagnosed me with meningitis, which is the swelling of the lining around your brain. And I didn't know what that meant. Like at the time, I'm like, okay, so what are we going to do about this? Like I was just in a lot of pain at that point in time. And it was a couple hours later that I remember them telling me that I was in brain aneurysm territory and I had about a 40% chance of a brain aneurysm, which means that I had about a 40% chance of dying. And they weren't sure if this was what's called bacterial meningitis, where they'd actually have to open me up and go back in and start scooping stuff out, or if this was viral, which they could probably get under control with meds. So they, over the next couple of days, I couldn't open up my eyes. They put me on pain meds, nothing touched the pain because again, your brain doesn't have pain receptors. So it's all phantom pain that your mind creates. And they shot me. I had over a dozen IVs in me, which I didn't know you could stick an IV in between your toes, but apparently you can because when your veins start falling apart up here, they need other places to stick you with. So they stuck them in my toes, my legs, my arms, my neck. I had IVs sticking out of me everywhere. They threw everything they had at this, and
Your neck.
they stuck them everywhere, and it to the point where it turned my veins brown. Like I had green and brown veins. I've never seen anything like it. I was bound to a hospital bed for about another 10 days at that point. They ended up getting everything under control. And like they were shooting me full of steroids, which I didn't realize how much energy that gave you when you're bound to a bed. You just want to run through a wall at that point. Like my body was full of the most crazy drugs you could imagine.
Wild.
So a couple days later, they got everything under control and I convinced my doctors I was well enough to leave. And we booked the first return flight home. And I felt like, hey, at that point, I'm out of the woods. Like I'm good. I can get back to work. And then I had to then push through a non-linear 6-month road to recovery. So I would have weeks where I felt really, really terrible. And then I'd have a day where I felt pretty okay. And then a month would go by. I wouldn't have a single good day. And then I'd have another good day or two. And during that time, I was in and out of our local hospital dealing with blood clots from all of the IVs they had me shot up with. I had sciatica from being bound to a hospital bed for so long. I'd learned how to walk again for a second time. I had double vision that lasted about 3 months. I had to wear special glasses just to look at my laptop. I had severe muscle loss just because I couldn't move. It took me about 4 months to learn how to drive again. It was a very long road to recovery. And during that time, I was still working on this business. I was still attempting to make this work because it was my only option. I literally had that gun to my head. And it was around that time I made my first hire and decided to make this business potentially a thing. And that was like the first big risk that I made other than launching the company in and of itself.
Up until that point, through all of this physical, issues you were dealing with, how did you, and I know you mentioned you would put some of your clients on ice, but how did you actually physically do the work? I mean, I know you have a background in CS and computers and website design. Were you doing all the work at this time, or you working with freelancers, or how are you executing on the sort of the promises you were making to your clients at this point?
I was doing 100% of the work.
Wow. Austin.
Yeah. It's, again, I think we're all capable of more than we think we are. And it's not until you are put in a position where you have no other option that you really see how far you can push yourself. I think the Navy SEALs have a good mindset around this. Is like they're going to stick you in cold water. They're going to keep you up for a week on end, and you're either going to make it or you're not. And I didn't have any other choice. I was either going to make it or I was going to die trying. Like those are my only two options. I was not going to show up to my family and say that, hey, sorry, I just got tired this day, and sorry, we couldn't make this work. We need to sell the house.
Was the impact of all of this surgery and the recovery, did that begin to sort of was that very much a central part of your life, or at what point did it become less of a focus, so you could focus on other areas of your business and life?
It was around the time that I made my first hire. So I had always worked with contractors in the past, right? But I'd never hired a W-2 employee before. That was up to that point in my life, a relatively new concept of, hey, I can manage a team, but I'm going to put somebody else's financial future in my hands. And I'm going to bring them on. I'm going to pay them a salary that they're going to expect to see every single month, regardless of
Yeah.
how the business does.
Right.
And at the time, I didn't have a large network of people that I could reach out to and say, hey, you want to take this risk with me after I just got through with brain surgery and I couldn't even see straight? Um, but I did have somebody that I took a gamble on. His name was Nick. He actually worked for me at that previous job that I had from the prior year. And he had gone on to do other things at that time. But I reached out to him. I'm like, hey, Nick, are you interested in another job? Like, I have this opportunity. I don't know if it's going to work, um, but it's going well right now and I need help. And he stopped everything he was doing and came on board like a week or two later. And
Wow.
in that week or two time frame, I figured out how to pay a W-2 employee and how to get payroll set up and do all of the hard things.
Yeah.
And it was at that point in time where my priorities started to become bigger than just myself and my family. It was then involving other people, not just my clients. And that's whenever I started to get a little more energy back in my life to look at it from
Yeah.
the standpoint of, all right, I got this business. I'm now employing people to support and serve clients and my family. Let's make this thing work.
What was happening in the business that caused you to realize you needed to make that first hire? Why not just work with freelancers?
Yeah. I, all right. My theory about running a business is it being a learning experience. You can learn how to make money and make revenue, sure. But if you really, really, really care about business, the underlying principle of a business is to serve others, whether
Yeah.
it's your clients, your team, your family, you're serving other people, right? And yeah, you're going to make money along the way. But at the end of the day, I look at it as I want to build a team. I want to learn how other people do this thing that I couldn't do in the past. So if I look at some people that I know who I would consider maybe missing a few brain cells, maybe a few more than I'm missing, but are way more successful than I am, that whole concept of like they can do it, so why can't I do it too?
Yep.
Has
Yep.
always just
Absolutely.
been, yeah, it's just been like the forefront of my life of like, I
Yeah.
know
Of
these people can do it, so somebody else has already proven it can be done. Why can't I do it too?
course you
So
can. That's right.
that's why I decided to make a hire and not just continue down the contractor route is I wanted to build a team. I wanted to understand how to build a culture and how to scale that up effectively. And that's why we now have 36 team members today.
That's awesome. What was Nick's role in the company?
At the time, he was an account manager because
Yeah.
I did not have the energy to talk to clients at that time. I had the energy to crank out some websites late at night or spin up some ad campaigns and get those optimized. That
Yep.
was on my time, but I didn't have the physical energy to sit on the phone with a client for an hour long and remember everything that they said at the beginning of the call. Like it
Mhm.
was like my head was in the clouds, right?
Yeah.
So I hired
You
Nick
had a
as an
few
account
things going
manager.
on.
Yeah. I hired Nick as an account manager. I told him, hey, man, you're going to talk to clients
Yeah.
and I'm going to
Yeah.
tell you what to say. And he did a great job at that.
It's
Um,
awesome.
it was about 6 months later, I promoted him into operations director, and he is still our
Yep.
ops director today.
Oh, I love it. With a greater focus on building the business at this point, what did you do to acquire customers? Like, what were the things that you did that were successful and maybe less successful in growing the business?
Yeah. So I I knew that I knew that I didn't have a ton of runway to invest in the ad campaigns early on. And my background was always in organic growth on Google. So the world of search engine optimization. And
Yeah.
I knew how to rank a website. That's what my clients always paid me how to do. So I figured, hey,
Yeah.
I need to prove to them that I can do this if I'm gonna, do it for myself, or if I'm gonna do it for them, I need to be able to do it for myself as well. So
Yeah.
early on, I started investing in content. I started just really investing my time into developing new high impact blog posts, for instance. And this is all before ChatGPT. So I was handwriting each and every
You
one of
actually
these
had to
blog
write
posts.
the stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So early on, that was my strategy. Now at the time, Google still had my website in a sandbox because that domain was only purchased a few months before actually launching the
Right.
business. So I had no chance of getting on page one of Google. I started leveraging partnership opportunities that were out there by just simply mass emailing at a very personal level, one by one, different industry partners, prospects that were out there that I might be able to provide value to, and they might be able to give me a platform to speak on top of.
Okay.
So I would very much say organic growth and networking were the long play. Short term, I had 3 months worth of runway for ads. I kept those ad campaigns going. That gave me enough momentum to wait
Yeah.
on the other results to take impact.
What would be an example of a partnership that worked for you? Like what type of partnership?
I call them JV partnerships, and
Okay.
I'll give you a great example. Early on, we used high level for our clients. We gave them access to it. We showed them how to use it, and
Hmm.
it was fun, but it was also a burden. Like we literally became a CRM management company, and I
Yep.
I told my team at the time, like, hey guys, that's not what we do here. We're a marketing agency. So I pulled back on that early on and just said, hey, we're going to partner with those that already do this thing that we're offering for our clients, but better. So there's a company out there called Drip Jobs. Shout out to Tanner Mullen. Um,
Hmm.
if you are serving the home service space, highly recommend reaching out to them. They have a two-way sync. You can put data in, pull data out, and they have a whole network of like pre-typed up follow-up sequences. So just made it really
Nice.
plug and play for our clients. No learning curve. And what that allowed us to do was partner with somebody that we can refer people to, and they can refer people back to us. And that mutually beneficial relationship is really what you're
Yep.
after in any partnership. Now, the one thing I will mention, if you're listening to this and you're looking to develop an industry partnership, always lead with value. Do not ask for anything in return. So, for instance, Corey, I would approach you and say, hey, Corey, I have some clients. I serve this industry. So do you. What value can I add to your audience today?
Yeah.
What can I do
Yeah.
for you? And then usually on the backside of that, that will come around in some benefit to you, but do not expect that. Do not lead with an ask.
That's right. But it's building, it's long-term relationship building. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say so. You got the ad campaigns to sustain you. You got these partnership opportunities, building relationships there, building value. You got the SEO working. Was there anything else looking back now that's been influential in your ability to grow the agency to 30 people and so on and so forth?
So our number one lead source and number two lead sources are unpaid channels. So it's going to
Okay.
be if you go on Google and type in Facebook ads for painters, Google ads for painters, like we're position one, page one for that. We also invest in ads still. The second most popular channel for us is email marketing. I think it's an under
Okay.
leveraged channel, but I also think a lot of people don't provide enough value to make it work. And they don't
Okay.
understand the long term brand awareness play that you need to implement there. So email marketing, you'll typically see something very similar to like a partnership ask, which is like you ask them for something. Hey, would you like to book a call? Is there, are you interested in marketing services?
Mm.
Nobody's opening up their inbox for that. What they are opening up their inbox for is value. You need to provide them with value before you ask for anything. In fact, I've never sent a single email to a single prospect asking for anything in return, and it is our number two lead source. And it's because we're providing them with value. I can't tell you how many people book a call with us and say, I've been following you for years. I'm ready to buy in. Just tell me how much. That
Yep.
makes the sales process extremely easy.
Totally get it. So what would be an example of a value focused email? Like what type of content is this specifically?
It's very, very simple. Ask yourself, what are the greatest pain points of my audience? What do
Hmm.
they suffer from the most today?
Yep.
Sure, it might be marketing. It could also be something completely unrelated to whatever it is that you do. I
Yep.
remember typing up an article about the best looking business cards or how to format a business card for the painting space because
Mm.
our clients kept asking about it. Like, hey, do you have a
Yeah.
good business card design? I'm like, no, but I can write an article about it. I
Yeah.
wrote an article about how to take good before and after images because our clients sucked at before and after images. We actually interviewed an interior designer and she talked through her process of how she goes and photographs houses for real estate agents. Again, we're
Yep.
providing value without asking anything in return.
Mm.
So I just recommend identifying the pain points. Straight up ask your clients, what is there something that we could do today that would make you happier about sticking around with us that we're not currently doing? And
Yeah.
then write some content around that.
And how often are you sending an email?
Early on, it was once a week. It was a smaller list. We needed more volume. Today, it really depends on our need. And what I mean by that is if we're booked up, if our onboarding calendar is completely booked up for 30 or 60 days, right? We may only send out one article each month, or we may only do one or two podcasts that month.
Yeah.
I recommend if you can do at least twice a month, preferably 4 times a month, but
Yeah.
again, lead with value.
Do you have a CTA or a call to action in the email?
We have the smallest call to action, and it is just describing who we are. Hey, are you new to base
Yeah.
coat marketing? Here's a one sentence elevator pitch about who we are.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
below that, we have more value. We have a free SEO audit. We have a link to our Facebook community.
Right.
We just provide value, 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 value. I
Mm.
cannot recommend that enough.
So SEO is number one as far as lead source, emails two. What about number three? What's the third most popular?
So then it comes down to our paid channels, which is going to be things
Yeah.
like paid search and paid social. Now, I'll be completely honest with you. We didn't start running a single social media ad until we hit about $2 million, which was last year. And that's whenever I was like, all right, we've already maxed out Google for what it sounds like. We're seeing some diminishing returns over there. Let's spin things up on social media. So
Yeah.
that to me is more of a brand awareness, top of funnel play. It's getting people interested, knowing that you're available and that you're there. You do need a stronger offer and a better call to action over there to really get people to move. So
Yeah.
it's a slightly different play, but at the same time, you need that omnipresence approach, especially in our day and age with AI and everything else. You can't just
Yep.
be focusing on one channel.
There's a study that came out that says you have to be your buyers before they're ready to have a sales conversation. They need to interact with you 11 different times across 4 different platforms.
Yeah.
Right.
I
And so
hear,
being
I
able
hear,
to,
I hear that stat like with different, like varying degrees of how many times and how many channels. But I would argue that like if you're not hitting them at least 10 times, they
Yeah.
hear your name from other people, from
Right.
multiple platforms. Like to your point, you're not going to get them on the phone.
Yeah. And in your ads, in your just curious, in the Facebook and the other ads, are you driving towards an appointment, or are you driving towards some other value, or what has worked for you?
It depends on which stage of the marketing funnel they're in. So for
Yeah.
instance, if they're on Google, we're gonna try to get them with a discovery call, right? Like see if we're available in your area. We do lockdown markets.
Yeah. Oh,
If it's
interesting.
if it's on Meta, we're gonna be more top of funnel. In which case, we're gonna be hitting them with maybe a lead magnet or some additional
Yeah.
value. Where we're not actually making an ask, but then we're gonna drip out that email sequence over the course of 6 to 12 months, and they're eventually gonna bite.
Awesome. We live in a world where all of a sudden the secret of vertical specialization is out. There's probably some competitors in your space. How do you differentiate in this world?
We do have some competitors. The one thing that I have found that we do exceptionally well is we don't put all of our eggs in one basket. So
Mm.
I've had this existential crisis a number of times off of scaling this company, where I look at what our competition does, and they're generally like a single channel agency. Like think about like a social media marketing agency or an
Yep.
SEO agency.
Point solution.
They do
Yeah.
one service for one industry really, really well. And they just have it easy. Like, and I say that as an outsider, I'm sure they cry in the closet too, but I wish we could simplify our operations and become more profitable. But
Yeah.
at the same time, our biggest point of differentiation is we are the only full service in-house agency
Mm.
dedicated to painters. A lot of people outsource their work, or they specialize in one channel. So we have very much positioned ourselves as the industry expert from across the board. We do not put all your eggs in one basket. We treat marketing like the stock market. You need to diversify.
I love it. I think that's a great positioning, by the way, just from my familiarity with the market overall. We're in a period of sort of the economy and the world where AI is becoming much more prevalent. It definitely has potential to make a big impact in agency world, providing sort of marketing services. I think it already has. What is your perspective on what's going on with AI, and how are you maybe thinking about AI as from a strategic perspective as a business owner?
All right. So I see two main categories or two main buckets of people whenever it comes to AI right now.
Yeah.
Those that have the blinders off and they are looking at every shiny object out there. They're testing out every tool, figuring out how they can leverage AI the best, right?
Yeah.
And then you have those with the blinders on, and they're not even thinking about AI. They're just running in
Right.
the opposite direction because they are afraid.
Yeah.
I tend to fall somewhere in the middle, meaning
Yeah.
like I want to make sure we're looking at tools that aren't just the fly by the night type of companies that we can actually
Yeah.
grow into, we can leverage. Um, and I'm not going to keep my blinders on, knowing that this is going to impact our agency, the products that we offer in a very large way.
Mm.
Now, when I look at how we're leveraging it today, one of our core values is be the 20%. So there's that
Nice.
80-20 rule, 20% of your efforts generate 80% of your results. It's why we don't offer organic social posting, for instance. There's a lot of marketing agencies that will do some organic social posts for their clients. They'll do that
Mm.
typical 4th of July, like we wish you a happy 4th of July post. Like that's
Yeah.
not generating results for your clients, right? But they're paying you to do that thing. So
Right.
I just look at that as a waste of time and a waste of money. So we just don't do it.
Yep. Yep.
Um, as such, I will not invest any time into AI if it doesn't move the needle in a significant, measurable way.
Yeah.
One of the best ways that I have found to leverage AI is for quality assurance checks. So a human's in the loop. We need to verify based on hard data from our client whether or not the output of our human is up to our client's standards. AI
Nice.
is very, very good at picking that apart. So that's one
Mm.
thing that we've implemented across the company at every level is AI QA processes. That's immediately impacted our quality, which is a good thing.
I love it.
Um, AI is very good at auditing data. We leverage it. Every single team has their use cases for it. Um, I do think it's going to impact some channels more than others. So I think
Yeah.
SEO, organic growth on Google, that's going to be number one to go. Paid search, maybe number two. Paid social, even though Zuck keeps talking about replacing all marketing agencies with AI over there, I don't
Yeah.
think he's going to have a lot of
Google
success with
said
that.
that about their platform maybe 15 years ago. So
Yeah.
I didn't see that happening.
It's funny. I was talking to another agency owner last week, and he
Yeah.
brought up a really interesting concept, which is these platforms like Google and Meta, they still need to hold somebody accountable. They're not going to be the marketing agency because who's going to come complaining? They're going to come complaining to Google or Meta. They don't have the
They're
resources for
not
that.
good at that at all.
No. So there's still going to be a time and a place for agencies. I just think what's going to happen is unless you differentiate yourself enough,
Yeah.
provide additional value outside of just being a button pusher, lever puller, your
100%.
cost that you're going to be able to charge for those services are going to go down.
When did you hire your first salesperson?
So relatively recently. And
Okay.
I will say that because our greatest challenge is the fact that we work in a seasonal industry. And
Mm.
anybody listening in, if you're considering niching down, consider not just the fact that you want to work with these people and that you can generate the returns for them relatively easily, but also whether the fact that your industry is seasonal.
Yep.
So a seasonality curve looks like your prospects are extremely busy. Like this time of the year, our prospects aren't thinking about marketing because they're booked out 2 months.
Mm.
And as such, our lead volume drops by 75%. And that is difficult to support for a sales team. Now, we're exploring all options over here, outbound, inbound, to keep that all steady. And
Yeah.
we do recognize that we are very much going to have to, not just hunt, but also farm. So yeah, to answer your question more directly though, that was about this year that we started hiring sales reps.
And so what was happening that caused you to realize, hey, I need to hire a salesperson because why?
Because I still own a job. If I went on vacation with my family, the company would still run, but it wouldn't
Right.
grow. I mean, it'd
Right.
probably die because I wasn't bringing in
Yeah.
new business. So
Yeah.
until you get yourself out of sales,
Yeah.
you own a job. That's the number one reason.
And so you hired this person recently. How's it going?
So we have been working with several industry consultants. So I like to say I invest about a figure salary a year into business coaching, consulting,
Right.
and it is something that has really helped us get to where we're at today. I still do sales calls. I'm still on there, but at the end of the day, I have a support system in place. So if I go away for 2 weeks, the business will still grow. There's still
Yeah.
opportunities flowing in. There's still a pipeline to be filled. But those consultants have helped us dial in our operations behind the sales process. Now, to say
Yeah.
it's perfect or it can't be better, I would be lying to you, right? But I think that's why we always want to have that continuous growth mindset around what you're doing today, what's right, and then what's actually possible.
Well, I'll tell you, at Scorpion, we had 60 salespeople, and by no means was it perfect. We had a 100-person sales organization. We had sales enablement. We had sales admins. We had project managers. We had this whole infrastructure, and it was, messy would be a compliment compared to where it was.
Oh, look, Corey, I say this all the time, man. Like, nobody has it figured out. I think
Nobody,
even the business
IBM, Google, no one has it figured out,
yes, NASDAQ businesses, they still don't have their shit
Yeah.
figured out. So don't put people on a pedestal.
Exactly. All right. Well, Austin, this has been fantastic. I have just a couple of other questions. There's probably 1,000 questions that we can go into, but from a time perspective, I'm going to wrap it up, ask you just a couple more questions. The first one, we'll start with the vertical market specialization. What are the biggest negative aspects of taking a vertical market approach in your mind?
So, I mean, really, it's saying no to the opportunities that are out there. But I would argue that is a very, very small problem to have when sales becomes like shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah.
When you focus on one vertical, it allows you to become the industry expert. You can talk their language. You can get to understand their business and their pain points. So that way, whenever they come to you, like most agency owners have heard and said, hey, all the leads suck, you can look into the data and determine why. And being able to answer the why behind why something's not working is extremely important to be able to scale a business.
Yes. And your competitors are not doing that. So it is a competitive advantage when you can provide that value.
That is without a doubt. It's anytime we are up against the generalist agency, we'll win 10 times out of 10.
All day, every day.
You are going to have competitors that specialize in your industry, and that's usually who you compete with. But again, have a differentiating point, understand where the market gap is, fill that gap. And then more so, and this is the thing that I really want everybody to hear, competition, I do pay attention to them, but pave your own path. 9 times out of 10, your competition's paying attention to you more than you're paying attention to them. So be the industry leader, do things that other people aren't doing, be willing to fail, be willing to try something new, keep innovating, and keep leading with the mindset of how much value can I provide. At the end of the day, that's what's going to help you succeed the most.
Well, I love that. That almost completely answers my second to last question for you, which is, given the journey from being a full-time employee, e-commerce, having the entrepreneurial itch, stepping out, and then months into this entrepreneurial journey, you have a health challenge that literally like rocks your world. Having been through that experience, been able to rebuild and then have this wonderfully successful agency and continuing to grow, what would your advice be for maybe agency founders who are just starting out and they're maybe overwhelmed, they don't know what to do, maybe they're a little stuck. Like, what would you say to those folks?
Yeah. All right. There's 4 simple things you need to focus on in this order. Your body, your mind, your relationships are the first 3. Those 3 things have one thing in common, and that's that you need to focus on you. So it took a world of pain and uncertainty for me to be able to understand what's most important in my life, where I need to dedicate my time, and more importantly, my attention. See, I think a lot of people look at their time as their most valuable asset, but it's not. I can't tell you how many times I've sat at the dinner table with my wife and she has had a conversation for about 5 minutes and I walked away from that conversation not hearing a single word that she said, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's your attention. And for you to be present and active in your life, whether it's with your wife, your kids, your partner, that is the most important asset that you have in your life. So prioritizing your body, your mind. So I'll give you guys examples. Working out every single day, or just keep it simple. Walk after every meal, go to bed early, wake up early, get your day started sooner. Meditation, reading a book are all great for your mind. But anything that just kind of quiets your mind. I do this crazy thing called cold plunging. And I tell a lot of people, like, there's a lot of physical benefits behind it, but really it's the mental challenge of getting in a cold body of water each day. And I'm stressing out my mind on purpose, because that release of cortisol is the same sensation that your mind goes through when you have an unhappy client. And if you can train your mind to deal with that cortisol release during a controlled environment, you become much better at taking control of that situation when things become stressful in your business. I call it the chimp mind. If you guys want to read a good book, it's called The Chimp Paradox, and it explains all of that. And then your relationships, like you need to focus on your relationships, your friends, your family. They are the most important thing in the world to you. I like to use the analogy, like I'm sure you've heard, nobody's going to remember how hard you worked as much as your kids. But really, like I would argue that most of our clients won't even remember our name 5 years from now, let alone how hard we worked. And the fact that we sacrifice our time and attention for strangers who aren't going to remember our name in 5 years for spending time with those that we love most is absolutely crazy to me. So prioritizing those 3 things, I like to spend time on each of those 3 things every single morning before I start my workday. And then the last thing is your business. You focus on your business last. That gives you the energy to power through every other challenge that you're going to face throughout your life.
I love it. Last question, Austin. What's your motivation?
Oh, my family, hands down. I would do anything for them. They are the biggest joy in my life. I get so excited to see my boys smile. The other day they wanted to go fishing, and they've never fished off the beach before. We usually got on our boat. So I take them out fishing along a little beach out here, and I texted my wife like 2 minutes after we got there. I'm like, they're not going to catch anything here. It was like a boat basin, and 2 minutes after him casting a rod out, he pulled in a fish. I'm like, that
No way.
prove me wrong. So, but like seeing the joy on his face, knowing that like this is a Sunday afternoon, I just got back from travel. I got in at like 3:00 that morning. I was exhausted, but I put out a beach chair. I let them fish. I was out there just hooking the rods the whole day. So that experience, there's nothing in my life that brings me more joy. Serving my team and my clients, I would say, is a close to second to that. But absolutely, my family comes above all else.
Beautiful. I love it. So where can people who want to engage with you, learn more about you, where can people find out and connect with you?
Yeah. So the best way is just to go to basecoatmarketing.com. If you're interested in how we can serve you as a professional painter or epoxy floor coating company, just go grab a spot on our calendar and talk to our team. For any agency owner that wants to reach out to me, if they're having challenges in their business and wants to just discuss like how I might be able to help or any of my challenges that I've gone through that might be able to benefit them, shoot me an email, austin@basecoatmarketing.com.
Beautiful. Thanks so much for joining, Austin.
Thanks for having me here, Corey.
Thanks for tuning in to the Deep Specialization podcast. Are you ready to find out if your agency is built to scale? Take my free 5-minute Agency Growth Score assessment at agencygrowthscore.com. That's agencygrowthscore.com, and get tailored insights across your positioning, marketing, and sales systems. Also, be sure to subscribe for more episodes that help you specialize and scale your sales with dream clients.